When Daniel Harper entered his late Uncle Arthur Hale's apartment, he expected silence and emptiness, but instead the place felt strangely untouched, as if time had simply paused. Dust drifted through the dim light from the window, revealing shelves packed with books and papers that hinted at years of quiet study. While moving furniture, Daniel noticed a loose floorboard and pried it open out of curiosity. Hidden beneath it was a worn black leather notebook wrapped carefully in cloth. When he opened it, the first sentence immediately caught his attention. It read that if someone was reading the notebook, Arthur was already dead, and whoever found it now had the responsibility to finish what he started. The message felt unsettling, not dramatic like a story but deliberate and calm, as if Arthur had written it with complete certainty. As Daniel turned the pages, he realized the notebook wasn't a diary but a list of instructions, precise and oddly specific, like warnings meant to guide someone through situations that had not happened yet. In that moment, Daniel realized he had just stepped into a mystery his uncle had been trying to explain long before he died. Daniel had never truly known Arthur Hale. In the family, Arthur had always been described as brilliant but distant, a man whose mind was always occupied with complicated ideas no one else fully understood. Standing inside the apartment now, Daniel could see evidence of that life everywhere. Books covered nearly every surface, many of them about subjects Daniel barely recognized, from physics and philosophy to cryptography and strange historical theories. Maps with hand-drawn circles and notes hung on the walls, suggesting that Arthur had been studying something very carefully. Yet the apartment didn't feel abandoned. The kitchen still looked organized, and a chair near the table remained slightly pulled out, as if Arthur had simply stood up and planned to return later. It gave Daniel the strange feeling that whatever Arthur had been working on was unfinished, waiting quietly for someone to continue it. And with the notebook now in his hands, Daniel couldn't shake the thought that Arthur had left those instructions for someone exactly like him to find. Later that evening, Daniel sat down and began reading the notebook more carefully. Each page contained numbered instructions written in the same calm handwriting. Some were simple reminders, like locking every door before sunset, but others were strange warnings about things that might happen inside the apartment. One instruction near the beginning stood out to him immediately. It said that before doing anything else, he should confirm that he was alone. The sentence seemed unnecessary, but Daniel decided to follow it anyway. He walked slowly through the apartment, checking every room and hallway. Everything appeared exactly as it had before. But as he passed the hallway mirror on his way back to the living room, he suddenly felt the odd sensation that someone might be standing behind him. When he turned around, the hallway was empty. The silence felt heavier than before. When Daniel returned to the notebook and read the next line beneath the instruction, it said that if he thought he saw something, he should not panic and simply continue reading. Somehow, that line made the quiet apartment feel even more unsettling. Over the next couple of days, Daniel kept returning to the notebook, studying it more seriously each time. The instructions started to form patterns that he hadn't noticed before. Many of them referred to specific times or events that might occur inside the apartment. One warned never to look out the window for several minutes after midnight, while another said that if the phone rang exactly 3 times and stopped, it should never be answered. At first Daniel assumed the rules were just odd habits Arthur had developed. But then small things began to happen that matched the instructions perfectly. One night the phone rang 3 times and fell silent. Another morning the stairwell light outside the apartment flickered just as the notebook had described. Each coincidence made it harder for Daniel to dismiss the instructions as nonsense. Instead, he began to wonder if Arthur had spent years documenting strange occurrences that no one else had noticed. The instruction that unsettled Daniel the most appeared a few pages later in the notebook. It warned that sooner or later he would begin to feel like he was being watched. According to Arthur's notes, the feeling would start quietly, like a subtle awareness that something in the room had shifted. The natural instinct would be to look around and search for whatever might be there. But Arthur had written clearly that searching for the watcher could make things worse. Daniel closed the notebook slowly after reading that page because the description felt uncomfortably familiar. Earlier that evening, while sitting in the living room reading, he had already felt that strange sensation once or twice, as if someone had been standing just behind him. Each time he turned around, the room was empty. Now the notebook was telling him that feeling might not be his imagination at all. Determined to prove the notebook wrong, Daniel decided to set up his phone to record the living room overnight. If something unusual was really happening inside the apartment, he hoped the camera might capture it. The next morning he reviewed the footage while sitting at the kitchen table. For hours nothing happened except the quiet movement of shadows as headlights from passing cars flickered through the window. But just after 2 in the morning, something strange appeared in the recording. The hallway door slowly opened by several inches and then stopped. No one entered the room. After a few seconds, the door closed again as if someone had gently pushed it shut. Daniel replayed the moment several times, trying to find a logical explanation. Yet the apartment had been empty the entire night. Near the end of the notebook, Daniel found what looked like the closest thing to a personal entry Arthur had written. The handwriting was slightly uneven, suggesting that Arthur had been tired or anxious when he wrote it. In the entry, Arthur described years of noticing small events that didn't seem to follow normal patterns. At first he believed they were coincidences, but over time he realized they appeared in specific places and moments. Arthur never explained exactly what those events were. Instead, he focused on the instructions that helped him avoid provoking whatever presence he believed existed. The final line of the entry revealed something unsettling. Arthur wrote that the notebook existed because he knew that one day he would eventually make a mistake. For several days after reading the final pages, Daniel followed the instructions exactly as they were written. He locked the doors before sunset and avoided looking at the window during the forbidden minutes after midnight. Nothing unusual happened, and slowly the tension began to fade. Eventually curiosity began to take over. One night, just after midnight, Daniel walked deliberately toward the living room window, ignoring the warning in the notebook. For a moment he saw nothing unusual outside. The street below was quiet, and the wet pavement reflected the glow of distant lights. But when he glanced at the reflection in the glass, he noticed something standing behind him in the room. Daniel turned around immediately, expecting to see someone in the apartment. The room was empty. When he looked back at the window, the reflection still showed the tall shadow standing near the hallway entrance. It didn't move or speak. It simply remained there in the glass as if waiting for him to notice it. The quiet apartment suddenly felt much smaller, and Daniel realized that by breaking the rules in the notebook, he might have allowed something to reveal itself. Shaken, Daniel returned to the notebook and searched through the final pages for any instruction he might have missed. Near the very end he found one last line written more hurriedly than the others. It said that if the rules were broken and the presence began appearing clearly, the only thing left to do was leave immediately and never return. Daniel sat at the table staring at those words while the apartment remained silent around him. Somewhere behind him in the dark hallway, he heard a quiet knock on the door, followed by a pause, and then another knock. The exact pattern the notebook had warned him about from the very beginning.